Visiting Australia from the US is American filmmaker Larry Wessel with his latest film, Palace of Wonders. He's a documentary filmmaker and he's a guest of the Melbourne Underground Film Festival. And it's my great pleasure to be welcoming to Australia Larry Wessel. Larry, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. It's wonderful to be here and an honor to be interviewed on your show. I saw Richard being interviewed on your show, and it was absolutely terrific. And I don't think I can outdo Richard, but I'll do my darndest to entertain you.
Fair enough. So, welcome to Movie Metropolis. So, you have such an interesting history of documentary films with the weird, the wonderful, the wacky, the unusual, the underground sort of aspects of people and characters. Tell me about your the motivation behind you making all of these films, including the latest one, Palace of Wonders.
Well, it all started really as a child watching public television. And back then, public television was a lot freer. They would show nudity, they would have profanity. There's no censorship like there is today. And back then, there was a fella every year, he would show his latest documentary. His name is Frederick Wiseman. And he's considered the godfather of what they call cinema verite, but they also call direct cinema. And I was blown away by the very first one of those that I saw. It was a documentary called Basic Training, and it was about it kind of like that scene in Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, the first half of it, where the soldiers are being turned into killing machines by being degraded and shouted at and yelled at by these drill instructors. Well, it was a lot like that, but it was done back in, that was about 1968, something like that. I was around 11 years old. There was also a television series on at the same time called An American Family, and it was done in that same style, cinema verite or direct cinema, where there's no narration. The filmmaker does not impose his personality on the thing like that idiot Michael Moore does. It wasn't propaganda. It was at that time considered to be the purest form of documentary you can make. Well, I was really excited by this stuff, and I wanted to do it. And finally, I shot little documentaries here and there. I got my parents to take me to the Watchtowers right after the Watch riots, and they took me out there, and I did a little documentary on the Watchtowers. And I was like maybe 12, 13 years old, was all. And I also did I think the very first the very first documentary I did was the very first film I shot with my brand new little Super 8 Kodak camera, and I shot the whole roll, the whole 50-foot roll, which amounts to a little less than 5 minutes, of my Mad Magazine collection. I just did an inventory of my Mad Magazine collection. I don't know why I thought that was so important, but at the time I thought, oh, this would be really neat. So I just shoot a few frames of each Mad Magazine cover. And then all these years later, in Larry Wessel's Palace of Wonders, I went to New York and I interviewed the oldest working writer at Mad Magazine. In fact, he calls himself Mad's the maddest writer, Dick DeBartolo. And he gave me a personal tour of the Mad Magazine building in New York. And it's no longer there now. Mad Magazine was taken over by, I think, Marvel Comics, if I'm not mistaken, or DC Comics. It's one of those big comic book conglomerates that make terrible, superhero movies and that kind of crap. And they moved Mad Magazine to Burbank so they could be, so they could lord it over the company. And poor Dick, he continued working at New York. They let him have his job for a little less than a year, and then they cut him loose. And he was happy to retire. He had worked for Mad for over 50 years. But anyway, so it was interesting how that kind of came full circle.
Mm. Well, you find such interesting people that are probably not that well known to others and so on. Tell me about finding and sourcing these interviews as part of your documentary.
Well, Palace of Wonders really started about 20 years ago. It was something that I had been working on while I was doing other documentaries. I always kept putting it on the back burner, and I was looking for artists who would kind of reveal their creative methods to me, and I was also looking for collectors who would wax poetic about the things they collected. And both are very big, interesting obsessions. You have the artist who focuses on the art and nothing else. A lot of times they'll let their health just go by the byway because they're so addicted to being what they call in the zone. I'm like one of these people too. I know I should be going to the gym, but boy, I'd much rather be in the zone editing something, But anyway, I was very interested in this kind of, if you want to call it a pathology, of both being an artist and also collecting stuff. And so over the course of 20 years, I met a wide variety of interesting collectors who had their own personal museums. And then and one of them, a guy in San Francisco named John Wickett, if you looked at the phone book in San Francisco, you would see the Museum of Exotica, and then you'd call that phone number, and he would decide whether he would allow you to see his private collection. If he liked you, he would let you. If he didn't, he'd just hang up on you. And if you usually 9 times out of 10, if you weren't a pretty female, he would hang up on you. He didn't like the company of men at all, and he entertained women all the time at his Museum of Exotica, even letting them live there with him in his fabulous museum. So he was a really interesting cat, but he's just one of I don't know 24 people that are in Palace of Wonders.
Okay. Tell me about the approach you take to filmmaking. Do you work individually, or do you have a small crew? How does your filming process work?
Oh, the whole crew is me. I conceive the thing, I write the thing, I shoot the thing, I edit the thing. I've even been known to compose music for the thing. It's like and then when the internet came along, and social networks like Facebook and Instagram, I started networking just kind of naturally with people all over the world who wanted to contribute things to my documentaries. They were all fans of mine, and they wanted to anyway be a part of it. So I met a lot of really interesting musicians, and a lot of those are featured in Palace of Wonders doing soundtrack stuff. My favorite though, and I couldn't believe I pulled it off. But I needed what's the sequence? I needed classical music, and I needed a particular piece. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm sorry, but I contacted it on YouTube. I found a performance that was done in Poland by a university orchestra, and it was the best version of this particular tune that I had ever heard. And I had all kinds of LP records of it, oh, I know now. It was a Ritual Fire dance by Dafala, and I used it in the sequence of Alex Schaefer, who got in a lot of trouble for painting. He would park his easel. He's a plein air painter, but instead of painting oceanscapes and mountainscapes and that kind of crap, he would park his easel in front of a bank, and he would depict the bank being in flames, like a bank's on fire was his thing. And so I got invited. I told him that I really wanted to document one of these bank burnings that he does, and so he invited me to downtown Hollywood one morning, where he parked his easel in front of a Bank of America, and he painted the whole bank, and then he painted the flames leaping out of the windows and the smoke. And before long, it looked like an actual fire was happening at this bank. But he got in trouble with the NSA and the FBI and the cops. He's been arrested because they all thought he must be up to no good painting banks on fire. He must be like one of the Weather Underground or something. But no, nothing. These were just visual. They were protests, but they were nonviolent. They're just paintings, But he really had it in for the banks. He didn't like how the United States government bailed gave welfare essentially to our banking institutions. He thought that they're not allowed to fail, and so the government would print up more money to keep the banks floating. And he felt that was evil and bad, and he was just really anti-banker guy, and so that's why he did those. But what's funny is the major collector of these paintings are all bankers. Like he got invited over to Switzerland for a big meeting of Swiss bankers, and they bought I think they bought a dozen of those paintings in Switzerland at an exhibition he had. And God knows where they hang them. I doubt that they hang them in their office, but who knows? Maybe they do. Maybe they think it's really funny. I don't know. But I thought that was really strange.
How interesting.
I forgot to tell you.
Yep.
So I contacted the Polish orchestra, not thinking that they would allow me permission to use their music. It was a full orchestra. And it was beautiful to follow this ritual fire dance. And so they wrote me back and they said, sure. They said everything here in Poland is funded by the government and it's all free to use. We don't put copyright restrictions on anything. And I said, well, terrific, thank you, and I will, I will give you a credit at the end of the film. But that was a major coup for me. That was like a Stanley Kubrick moment, where I was using a great piece of classical music to back one of my sequences in my documentary. Anyway, sorry if it was a little long-winded there, but.
No, that's very interesting to hear that process and that background and so on. I'm quite intrigued, Larry. How do you get your films out there so that audiences can see them and the responses that you get for your films?
Well, lately, it hasn't been always this way, but starting with the documentary I made called Love, which was about a painter named Beth Moore Love. Nobody knows who she is, but she's fabulous, and she does these really dark, sinister paintings. She's really into the macabre, and so am I. And she has a real macabre sense of humor. And I bumped into her years and years ago at a meeting with Adam Parfrey, the publisher friend of mine, and he wanted to put her art and my art. I make creepy collages too, and he wanted to put our art in a book that he was going to publish called Forbidden Art. And I just thought that was terrific. And so that's when I met Beth. And then when I started hanging out with her and talking to her on the phone, I just realized, oh my God, she should be the subject of my next documentary. So what I did, and at the time, I was getting laid off from a job I had at the telephone company. It was a really nice union job, but I got laid off, and I was living on unemployment benefits, and those were soon to run out. So my money was dwindling, and I found out about this thing called Kickstarter, and it's a fundraising platform. And so I talked to somebody who had a successful Kickstarter campaign. He was kind of a crooked guy, but he had a lot of really good advice about how to court people into your project. And so I followed his methods, and I found a lot of patrons of the arts, like among my friends and associates on Facebook. And at the time, was it MySpace back then? I could have been MySpace back then. I'm not certain. I think it was MySpace, which is the precursor to Facebook. And anyway, so I had a very successful Kickstarter campaign. And I didn't ask for a lot either. I just asked for a really bare minimum amount of money, just enough so that I could print up maybe 500 copies of the DVD and just have them in boxes, like waiting for orders. And then I would, back then, I would create a website for each and every project. And then I realized after a while that was ridiculous. But anyway, so I had a I think it was lovethemovie.org, I think was the name of it, which is no longer there. And then the second movie I did with the Kickstarter was called Eric and Shay. And it was all about Shay St. John, who is this internet sensation. She was like this viral internet superstar. And she was mysterious, though. She had no arms, no legs. Her face was so disfigured she had to wear a mask because her whole body was torn apart in a train when a train ran into her. And so she was able to somehow sue the train company and make a couple of $1 million. and she hired a filmmaker named Eric Fournier, and Eric Fournier made these incredible short films with her, and not for profit. He would just post them up on YouTube for free. Anybody can watch them, and so she became this viral like superstar, and everybody was curious, like, who is she? What is she? Like, is Eric pretending to be her? No. These two different people. Nobody knew, and so I like a detective. I put on my Sherlock Holmes hat, and I started tracking down all the family and associates and people who worked on these films with Eric, and interviewed all of them, and because I could not, and unfortunately, the last person, well, I was one of the last people that he friended on MySpace. And if you look up that there's an Internet Archive on this stuff. If you look up his MySpace profile, you'll see the six last friends that he invited, and Larry Wessel was one of them on there. And but it was odd because I had this brief exchange with him, but it was all like because I was really curious myself, and he answered the questions the best he could. But then I had to reenact that with an actor doing his voice and stuff, and I had the transcript and everything because it was all done on MySpace messaging, like they have Facebook Messenger now. So I just I copied that stuff and kept it. And so anyway, so Eric and Shay had a built-in audience and a fan base, and so that one was a real easy Kickstarter. I made the funds for that in just like 2 days or something. It's to make 500. My goal is always just make 500 copies of the thing, and then give them out to all the people who contributed, and also give them nice rewards and stuff other than that. So that was my second Kickstarter. My third, so I did Love, Eric and Shay, and then my third one was Palace of Wonders, had a Kickstarter, and it was, I think, within 24 hours I made all my funding because everybody wanted to see it, and it was all this built-in fan base that I have on Facebook, and now it's gone to. Now I discovered Instagram. People kept telling me, Larry, you got to get on Instagram, and I resisted for a long time, but now I'm on both Facebook and Instagram. But yeah, that's how I got these things made, and then I created a website for every one of those, except up until Palace of Wonders, and then I said enough is enough. I'm just gonna have one website, sell all my DVDs on that one website, and I got the idea from Coop, the artist Coop, who uses a website called Big Cartel, and it's a website builder run by artists for artists, and it's real cheap. It's like $9 a month or something to have a really, really delicious looking website. So anybody who wants to see my stuff, they can watch trailers of my movies, see the reviews, and all that kind of stuff. Or there was a store there too where they could buy all the DVD titles. But that's called Wesselmania. Wesselmania dot bigcartel.com. And if you do that, you'll end up on my website. And I try to make it entertaining and colorful and fun for people. So
okay, I was so fascinated by the range of people that you've put in as subjects of your films, including related to Charles Manson, to tattooing, to carnies, and one that really drew my attention: sex, death, and Hollywood mystique. You really find some interesting subject areas.
Yeah, sex, death, and the Hollywood mystique was really, really a lot of fun, and it started out as a documentary about the true crime writer John Gilmore, and his publisher contacted me and asked me how would I like to do a documentary about him, and I said I don't know. I had read one of his books at that point. I read a book that Adam Parfrey published called Cold Blooded about the serial killer Charles Schmidt, who I was fascinated with, and that was a really good book, I thought. And I thought, well, if his other books are as good as this one, maybe it could be a good subject, maybe. And so the guy sent me all of his books. I read all of them, and found him really interesting. He had a wide range of topics that he did a film. He did a book on the Black Dahlia, claiming that he knew who killed her. And he did another book called oh, what was that last one he did? Anyway, he did a number of true crime books, and um, so he next thing I know, he's calling me and telling me, when are you coming over? When are you coming over? I want you to. He goes, I love your bullfight doc. Everybody loves my bullfight documentary, and that's kind of like the thing that gets people interested in me and making a film. He goes, I want you to do a documentary about me. It was like really egocentric, and I said, well, oh yeah, man. And he goes, I'll tell you what, I'll fly out here to New Mexico, and you can hang out with me and shoot a bunch of interviews, and I'll do a costume change for every interview and all this kind of stuff. And I said, okay, let's do it. Oh yeah, he did another book where he claimed to be best friends with James Dean, which I think is a total fabric. I mean, now when I look back at it, I think he fabricated the whole thing. And in fact, every single book of his is a fabrication. Like he did a book on the Manson family too, called "The Garbage People." And when I visited Nick Bugas, who was actually he was Charles Manson's press agent. Like anytime that Geraldo Rivera or any of these big news companies wanted to boost their ratings, they'd put on a Charlie interview, and Charlie told him that you had to talk to Nick, and Nick was his manager. Well, Nick and I were really good friends, and so I would this book came about, Garbage People. I went over to talk to Nick, and Nick said he said that was all cobbled together from Los Angeles Times articles, and he said the only thing in there that was original were that somehow John obtained morgue photos of all the Manson family victims, like Sharon Tate and everybody, J.C. Briggs, all those people laid out and bloody, and morgue photos and also crime scene photos of them, and it was really lurid, but that's what sold the book. That was what he said. That's the only reason to keep the book, is that it has these rare photos in it. But outside of that, John he just copied everything from the Los Angeles Times. That was pretty funny. But what was interesting is that I started, like, he was friends with Curtis Harrington, who was a favorite filmmaker of mine, and so I got invited to a party at Curtis Harrington's in the Hollywood Hills, and I went there. And it was incredible meeting Curtis Harrington. And I asked him if he would like to be in the documentary I'm shooting about John. He said, oh, absolutely. And so I did an interview with Curtis Harrington. And then that segued into interviewing Forey Ackerman, who created Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine and was an associate of L. Ron Hubbard. And he has a great history, this guy, Forey Ackerman. And so I brought him into the fold too. So now the documentary was more than just about John Gilmore. It was also about Forey Ackerman. It was also about Curtis Harrington. And then I brought a prostitute friend of mine into it too, and told her story, because she had wanted to be a Hollywood movie star and ended up, being a junkie and supporting her habit by turning tricks. And so I had four stories to tell, and they're all interwoven. And it's darker than it's more than just one story about one person. Now it's all about the dark side of Hollywood, sex, death, and the Hollywood mystique. And the cover of that was a drawing by Beth Moore Love. Before I made the Love documentary, I got her permission to use the drawing she did of the Black Dahlia. It's a really interesting black and white drawing of her with her. Her body was cut in half, and then she depicts the ghost of the Black Dahlia rising, entwined in her own intestines. It's a dark image, and then she's going, and she's looking up at the stars, and she titled it Starlit. That was the name of this drawing, and so I thought, oh man, this is my cover. And now, 2023, I get contacted by a company in New York called Saturn's Core, and they want to re-release Sex, Death, and the Hollywood Mystique, and they also want to re-release Ultra Megalopolis, and they're having me do director's commentaries on both of those. They're restoring them, and they're digitally remastering them, and they will be 4K, Blu-ray, special edition box sets with all these extra features. So each one will be either one or two discs and full of stuff. A lot of stuff that I've never released before, and so for the collector's market. And I signed a contract for those two titles, and they like what I've given them so far so much that now they want to negotiate another contract for some of the other titles because their focus is the '90s. And apparently, I was completely naive to this because I'm so old. You know, I'm 66 years old. But apparently, there's a big nostalgia for the '90s now among the kids, and they love '90s stuff. And so that's Saturn's Core. That was they're a branch of a company called Vinegar Syndrome that re-releases old exploitation films and stuff, horror movies and stuff. And so they're a branch of that outfit run by a guy named Russ Snyder, who's really a terrific guy, and he's a big fan of mine. And now he's talking about maybe releasing some more titles from the '90s. So I'm really excited about that. That's really fun.
How interesting, from the underground to the mainstream. I love the journey. It's I love it.
I
Well,
know at this stage of my life too. You know, I think they're all banking on me kicking offers. I don't know. I hate to say that, but I know when you get a certain age, all of a sudden you get interest from collectors and people who want a piece of you before you slip on that banana peel and fall into your grave. You know.
okay, so Larry, you're here in Australia for the Melbourne Underground Film
Yeah.
Festival. Palace of Wonders is the film you're screening, and you're doing a masterclass. So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. In fact, the master class, I've put together about 30 minutes of clips from films, some of my favorite films that exemplify what Alfred Hitchcock called pure cinema. They exemplify the language of film, and I wanted to really impress that on the audience. Like these are masterworks of cinema, pure cinema, and so the first half is an hour long. My talk. The first half I will be narrating instead of a slideshow, it'll be like a little video show where I'll do commentary on that, live commentary on that, and then I'm going to read from. Let's see if I can see if you can see. Hold this up here.
Yep.
This is this is the cover of the memoir I'm writing called "King of the Underground and Other Moments of Clarity," a memoir by Larry Wessel, and I people will automatically assume I'm declaring myself the king of the underground, but it is not. That is not true. The reason it's titled that is because Kenneth Anger was referred to as the king of the underground, and he very well may be either the king of the underground or the bitter queen of the underground. Take your pick. But he was both of those, and I had three extremely unpleasant encounters with Kenneth, even though I really revered him, and I love the Hollywood Babylon books, and I always try to be nice to him, but always like the conversations we would have would take a dark turn and like a turn against me, and like he would end up just like railing at me, and like somehow I would manage to push all kinds of buttons that pissed him off. But his name, after all, he's Kenneth Anger, and his his company's called Anger Management. So that kind of gives you a clue as to what kind of personality Ken had. But he just passed away recently, sadly. So and so did Nick Zed passed away as well. And so, are there any kings of the underground left? I don't know. Maybe I am one of them. I don't know. I don't. But I would never call myself the king of the underground.
Well, Larry, it's been great talking to you. I hope you have a great time in Australia, and as part of
Thank you.
as part of MUFF, Melbourne Underground Film Festival, and with Richard and so on. And it's been fascinating talking to you.
Let me remind you,
Yes.
and maybe you could remind your audience that there will be two. Actually, now there's two screenings of Palace of Wonders. One of them will take place on this coming Saturday, which is tomorrow. At a place called the Q Room. It's like the letter Q, and that's where all the screenings for MUFF 23 are happening. And so I'll be there tomorrow night I think my talk, my filmmaking masterclass will be at 7 p.m. and then my screening will be at 8:30 of Palace of Wonders. Now, if you buy a ticket for one or the other, you can see both for the price of one. So it's like a 2-for-1 deal. Pretty cool. And then also, somebody dropped out of the festival, and Richard contacted me. He was kind of frantic. He goes, "Do you want to show your movie twice?" I said, "Of course." And so there'll be another screening of Palace of Wonders at the Q Room once again, but Wednesday. So this Saturday and then the following Wednesday, you'll have an opportunity to see Larry Wessel's Palace of Wonders, and I'll have copies of the DVD available if anybody wants to, me to autograph one of them, buy one of them, or whatever. And I'm more than happy to do that. I limited a number of them, but yeah, if you strike early, I'll make sure you have a copy. Anyway, sorry for the last minute plugging there, but there you go. There you have it.
That is perfectly fine. Larry, welcome to Australia. I hope you have a great time as part of the Melbourne Underground Film Festival, and it's been great talking to you. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you, Peter. Okay, maybe I'll see you at one of the screenings.
Maybe, although I've got other commitments, but that's fine. I hope it all goes well.
Yeah, I'll be there for every single screening, including tonight. The opening is tonight.
It is.
And I will be there with bells on, and I'm really excited about it. And I want to. In fact, I'm having a power lunch with Richard today, which is exciting. And he's even that little chime you heard is Richard saying yes. So he's approving I guess he approves the message, which is good.
Excellent stuff. We've been speaking to Larry Wessel, the director of many films, but especially of Palace of Wonders as part of the Melbourne Underground Film Festival. All the best, Larry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. Have a great day now.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.